Hi, everyone. I am Brittany from College Greenlight team. I hope you all have enjoyed our earlier presentations by Northwestern and Colby College. I hope you all have found those presentations incredibly informative. Just to let you all know, we will be sending out the recordings for those who missed those presentations. Now, before we get started, here are a couple of tips just to get the most out of our last session. Please use the live chat feature to the right and chat with others in the room. And feel free to introduce yourself, tell us who you are and where you're from. If you have any questions, use the Ask a Question tool below. Note, there are no right or wrong questions, but try to avoid asking questions about your GPA, test scores, or admissions chances because our colleges can't provide you with the best answer without seeing your full application. If you're curious about your admissions chances, visit capex.com/greenlight.student or just click on the bottom button below and explore over 3,000 college profiles and learn from our CapEx insights. And if you're joining us live, please be sure to join the conversation and hashtag online college block party. We are looking forward to our next presenter. From Colorado College, we have admissions representatives Pedro Ramirez and Ryan Walsh to answer questions that you've always been too hesitant to ask. And joining them are current Colorado College students, Flor Vargas and Rain Commodore. All right, team, welcome to the stage.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you all for having us. This is going to be a fun session. This is the last session. We're going to have fun because we're going to keep it real. We're going to talk about all the things you've heard online, through your friends, through other people, through teachers, counselors, all the gossip we hear about college admission. We're really here to try to bunk a lot of myths. So this is a Mythbusters presentation. So myself, Ryan, Rain, Flor, we're going to be in the chats while we're presenting, so you can ask us questions. We'll even have some polls going on, and we're actually going to get some really good advice from Flor and Rain themselves as current CC students. So let's kind of just go over the topics we're going to cover here in the next, we'll probably go over this about a half hour, but we really actually are going to spend a lot of time answering your questions and talking with Flor and Rain. So we're going to go over really just first, what do colleges look for? So what are actually colleges really looking for in the admission process? And I think this will give you a really good idea of how some of these myths come to be, because once you really simplify what we're really looking for, I think it'll help you kind of understand what's really important in your application and kind of demystify a lot of different things. We're going to talk a little bit about where myths come from, because they do come from places all over. For you, many students, they might come, we'll talk about where they come from. Ryan's going to talk about that and really get into that. And why do myths happen? Because we hear a lot of things as admission counselors. We're also going to dispel some of our favorite myths that we hear constantly. Between Ryan and myself, we have almost 2 decades of admission experience. We've talked with thousands of students, thousands of families, and we've heard some real whoppers in our time, and we're going to share those with you and talk to you about why they're myths and why they're not true, and kind of put your mind at ease in this process. And then obviously we're going to talk with Flor and Rain. We're going to get tips from current students who applied just not long ago. Rain is a current freshman at CC. Flor is a sophomore. So they applied. They were just in your shoes a year ago. So they'll have some great insight for you in your college search. And then we'll just, like I said, we'll end it with some final questions and thoughts. But first, let's talk about the context of how colleges really read you for admission to get into college, right? We talk about something at Colorado College called the 3 C's, all right? So ultimately, we're trying to find and look at all the different ways you on your application or you as just a person are capable, compelling, and competitive in our process, right? Those are really the three questions we're asking, right? And we use anything from your letters of recommendation to your transcripts, to the things you're doing outside the classroom. All of those can be used to answer those three C's. So when we're thinking about how colleges are really looking at you, they're really looking at you at the end of the day to see, can you do the work, right? Can you actually not just get into college, but can you perform well at this school or university? Will you not, essentially struggle too much? And college is hard. Everyone will struggle in college, but we want you to actually have a baseline for you to succeed. And the competitive part is not necessarily are you have the best GPA, but do you show academic potential? Do you show that you can actually not only do the work, but that you can make a difference academically or socially or any such way on our campus? And so when we say competitive, we don't mean having the best test scores or the best grades. We definitely mean being the best person you can be. And then the compelling pieces. The compelling pieces are what are those outside factors that are really different, that make you stand out? Sometimes students think they don't stand out, but really when you look at them in context, you see students that have really cool experiences. They think it's normal to live in a rural farm in Oklahoma, or they think it's really everyone kind of has this one type of experience. And really, because students are spread across all over the countries and different communities, all of your experiences are valid and important. And so to talk about those experiences, to talk about who you are, is going to be a really important part of our application process that will be compelling for us in the process. So I'm going to hand it over to Ryan. So now that we kind of understand what the three C's are, what we're really looking for, then we can start talking about what myths do we hear in the college application process when we think about the three C's or think about how schools are really reading you. And we hear a lot of whoppers, like I said. So I'm going to hand it off to Ryan to talk a little bit about where some of these myths really come from.
Thanks, Beto. And some of that, folks, is that as you're thinking about how do you discern what we mean with those three C's, it's about trying to find that fit, right? In this college search process, you're trying to measure, am I competitive or capable or compelling to this institution? And a lot of that is trying to figure out the colleges and universities you're looking at. And so how you go about figuring them out means that you're going to go beyond just yourself. You're going to use the resources that you have at your exposure or disposal to be able to actually figure out if you're a good fit. So where do these myths come from? Well, as you're going through your college search process, you're going to hear from a lot of different people. You're going to hear from a lot of different sources. And the problem is that not all of them are going to be entirely accurate. So especially when it comes to online, which is a huge part of what this college search process has become for you all this year, let me also acknowledge that your generation is known to be well-tuned to be critical of how and from where you are consuming information. So do the same when you're doing this in your college search process. Check your source. Understand what it can and can't tell you about the schools that you're looking up, right? Schools like websites like College Confidential have no actual ability to be maintained by colleges themselves, and that's a good thing because you're getting honest, truthful responses. But it's also individuals' perspectives. It's not able to be responded to with facts and figures and information from the schools themselves. And so all sources online, especially, come with a degree of bias and should be considered with a grain of salt. Right? Any thing that you see online is going to be presented with that mindset. Especially when it comes to family and friends, keep in mind that these are your support networks, right? They're eager to help and want to provide you with all the information that they possibly can, but they also may not have had the ability to think through their sources or sought validation for what they're hearing. And in that way, you may hear information that is interesting, but maybe not well vetted. And so trust that they're trying to help, but also understand that you need to then follow up on that information and figure out for yourself if it's what you're hearing. Especially when it comes to alumni, right? These are huge resources in the college search process because these are folks who have lived this experience, right? It's where Flora and Rain are going to be in a couple of years, and they're going to want to be eager to share what they experienced while they're at Colorado College or wherever they are, for other students wherever they were. But the challenge with that is that that's only one of thousands of experiences and thousands of stories at any college or university. Also, that experience may be different than what the current experience would be like today based on changes in school cultures, community makeups, different institutional efforts and missions. So in that way, you want to understand the heart of what they're saying, but still seek out, is that true and is that accurate for what I will be able to experience at this college or university today? Right? And then finally, when you're thinking about yourself, we're filled with myths that we tell ourselves about ourselves, right? Imposter syndromes, doubts, concerns, apprehensions. These are a normal part of our daily life. And so it is challenging to be able to discern what is true and what is untrue about yourself. And that's why we encourage you to practice reflection and introspection throughout this process. The more that you think about yourself and center your college search and your desires, your goals, and your aspirations for what you want out of your college experience, that'll allow you to remain true to yourself and stay on course and not let yourself fall into some of those myths and traps that you'll create for yourself. And so as we talk about all these resources, right, ways that folks figure out how this college search process informs them and also discern where the myths are, we're going to start walking you through, and Pedro and I are going to jump back and forth and talk about some of the common myths and the areas that we commonly hear about as myths to kind of kickstart this conversation. And then at the end, of course, we're going to be talking with you all about what myths that you all hear about and things that you might want some answers to. So, Pedro, let's start getting people involved.
Yeah, let's do it. So we have some polls that I think coming up here. Hopefully they come up real soon. And we're going to go through them one by one, hopefully. I don't know if they're all going to come out at the same time. But we do have some polls that I think we have on. So if you click on the bottom right, yeah, some of you are answering them. We have 4 questions that they're pretty obvious what the answers are, I think, for the most part. However, there's still some of you that might think my essay has to be sad. And that's not true. A lot of people assume that, in the college application essay, you have to really tell this sad, compelling story to make people feel like so empathetic for you. And to be honest, while that can be a really important part of your experience, if that's something you want to talk about, that doesn't have to be what you talk about. I've read stories where students have talked about a conversation they had with their mom over breakfast that like not only was poignant, but just told me who the student was. The fact that students say, "Oh, I need to have perfect grades to get into a really good college." That's not true. A lot of students actually have the opportunity to really make up some of the work and maybe some of the missteps they had early on in high school. And maybe you didn't have the perfect math grades, but now you're taking AP or you're taking high classes and you're doing really well, right? There's also a misconception that extracurriculars outweigh bad grades. What did I say before? What we said before is we need to find that you're capable. And so even though you might have great extracurriculars and your grades were really bad or whatever, we want to see that you're capable of doing the work. So although, extracurriculars are great, we never want you to do too many extracurriculars. That's where it's going to hurt your grades as well. But know that, your grades are always going to be really important. They're always going to help us determine if you're capable. That's the first C, right, of the 3 C's. And then the last one I think is a really interesting one because it kind of relates to COVID. It relates to how students feel like they should engage with colleges. If I don't sign up to do everything, or if I don't sign up to do a virtual thing for every opportunity at this school, or if I don't show that I'm super into them, then it's going to hurt my chances. If I don't interview for the college, or if I don't do all these things, we know that life is tough right now. Things are not the way they're really supposed to be kind of working in everyday life, and we get that. So don't feel that you have to be kind of at every single thing to show that you really love a school or love a college, because to be honest, we're gonna understand the context of what's going on. So these are some really easy, common ones I think we hear that many of you probably kind of already understood. Yeah, these are myths. I don't need perfect grades, or my essay doesn't need to be sad. But really, we're trying to get you to really think that, write the essay you want. The grades are what they are, but really try to, make sure that you're hitting your stride in your senior year. Grades will always matter to determine if you can do the work. And we understand there's only so much time in a day for you to do every single thing to engage with the college, right? Especially when you can't visit colleges now because of COVID.
So we're going to talk through 3 different categories of more nuanced common myths that we hear. And I'm going to use this opportunity to remind you all that having a conversation about the financial fit for college is important early on in the process, because so much of the myths related to financial aid often come from the fact that students, families, support systems, guardians, whatever, people start this process too late, and they don't realize that having a sense of your financial standing and financial opportunities can really help guide your college search process. So I'm going to let you read through a bunch of the ones that are on the screen, but I'll comment on a few. right? Price tag. That's when we talk about the conversation about financial fit. It's about saying, does the price tag of a school actually fit with our family's budget, right? But the reality is, at many places, if the initial price tag scares you, that means you will probably never actually see that cost, right? It means that there are differences in how we distribute aid considering the cost of attendance, right? So an expensive school is expensive because there may not be as much aid for some, but if aid is being offered, it's because they know that that expense is not something that many families can pay for. So when you're looking at the numbers, right, don't just look at the full sticker price. Look at things like the percentage of students on financial aid. Look at the average amount of financial aid offered in a single package. Look at how much indebtedness alumni have when they graduate, and especially if alumni default rates are low. If students are able to graduate with low student loans, right, low debt or low default rates, it means that those schools are being able to offer loans and financial aid packages in ethical ways that allow students to be able to actually graduate and have a good quality of living while repaying loans. And it also means that your education can become accessible by taking on some of that financial responsibility, knowing that a school is going to meet you well beyond halfway in many cases. It's also why when we talk about public versus private schools, don't be fooled by the myth that private schools are always more expensive. While that full sticker price may be significantly more than the public school down the road, the financial aid package that those schools may be offered or be able to offer a single family may be comparable, or in many instances, the private institution may actually be able to do more for your family's financial situation than a public school may be able to. The same is absolutely true for large and small schools, right? The size of the school does not necessarily determine how much they're able to financially support students. Other things that are important to acknowledge is that scholarships are not the end-all and be-all of financial aid. In fact, a lot of schools which offer little or no academic merit scholarships often do so because they're putting the vast majority of their financial resources into the need-based aid pool to be able to meet that need for as many students as possible. In fact, most of the schools that you've heard from through this program are those types of schools where we're going to do as much as we can for need-based aid and not be as arbitrary when it comes to scholarships. And even if schools are offering scholarships, if you don't receive one, that is not a statement or comment on your worth or achievement, right? There are multiple things that go into how scholarships are determined. And again, what matters most is how much money can a school offer you. It doesn't necessarily matter whether that's a designation of need-based aid or scholarship. Find the schools that can do the most for you. Additionally, when it comes to financial aid process, it's important to notice when schools say that they ask you to reapply every single year. That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. Schools do that because they know that they want to be able to meet your need every single year, and so your aid package may change as your family's financial situation changes as well. So don't be afraid of the process. Oftentimes when it feels like it's more work, it's because we're trying to make sure that we are using every dollar as best as possible to make sure that we can support you in every possible way, or as many ways as possible when you arrive on our campus at many colleges and universities. So think about the aid process early on, but also don't be afraid of it, right? The more that you actually dive in, the easier it will be to understand this process and know exactly how you can find support for your options, regardless of the type of schools that you're looking at. Pedro, back to you.
Yeah, that's great advice, Ryan, and totally true. Like, sticker price is not the final price. And so definitely I want to ask Floor and Rain to jump in. So I'll shoot to Floor first. Floor, what were some maybe myths that you heard when you were applying, because you were applying a couple of years ago to college about cost of attendance and what college is going to cost? What are some things that you maybe not even myths, but just misconceptions you had?
Yeah, I went to a public school, so my counselors are pretty overwhelmed with the amount of students that they were advising. And one of the biggest myths that I heard from me personally was it would be cheaper to stay in state, which was not the case because everybody's situation is so different. And I really appreciated just the amount of resources that TV provided in order to break that myth for me, and the help that they provided through the whole financial aid process. But for sure, the fact that it's easier to stay in state would be the biggest myth that I encountered.
Yeah, definitely. And Rain, what about you? Were there any things that you heard from people, friends online that maybe were misconceptions in terms of the college affordability piece?
Yeah, so exactly like before, I went to a public school as well, where the counselors were very set on making the students. I'm from New York City, so they were making set that we were staying in the city and going to public schools, especially. They really pushed for that because they tended to underestimate the amount of aid that different private schools will give towards public school students. So I would say not necessarily trying to choose a public or a private school when they would always push for publics.
Definitely, yeah. Great advice, y'all. Thank you. So kind of going on to the next kind of myth here. It's, there are a lot of myths that students tell themselves, like about like even just the search process itself, meaning like, I'll let you read through these like Ryan did in the last slide, but I think the biggest one we want to like put him is like, there's this idea out there, like there is one perfect school for me. And if like, that is just my school, it's like finding the one, right? And I think that's a really hard way to approach finding a good college, because what happens is that you get so fixated on one type of school, one type of place, or one place in general, that you're not thinking about if you're a good fit for that school, but you should be thinking about, are you a good fit at other places? You have to give yourself credit. You're different. You're unique. You have a lot of interests. You are not just like someone in a box. So the way you should approach, picking schools and when you get into schools, whether deciding where you're going to go, is think about what places can I fit in, right? And so each student is going to do something, is going to, get into different schools. Sometimes you might not get into that dream school or that school you want. And that's okay, because usually the schools that want you, the schools that admit you, are the schools that think that and know that you're going to be successful there, and they see something in you that's actually going to be like a catalyst to help you succeed. So don't be obsessed over one school. Another thing is like, there's this kind of a myth that says like, oh, I need to have very specific passions, or I need to be extremely well-rounded to get in a really good school or get into college. And to be honest, we're not, colleges actually are not really looking for every student to be well-rounded. Some students will be rounded, right? You might be on a lot of different clubs and do a lot of different things, but it's okay if you don't have everything in the sun on your extracurricular activity list. It's okay if you're still figuring out your passions. I tell students all the time, I've been doing admissions for 10 years. I love it. I love working higher ed, but like, I'm not sure I want to do this for the rest of my life, right? The average person changes a career 5 to 7 times in their lifetime. So, having specific passions, being well-rounded, knowing what I need to be, those are things that I think, if you can find that at 17, I think that's a rare breed for someone 17 or 18 to know exactly what they want to be perfectly round. Nobody's perfect. We're still growing. The process of college is finding yourself, finding your passions, finding those things out. Because if you already had those passions solidified before college, then why would you go to college, right? So, just don't be so hard on yourself and feeling like you have to know everything. You have to know what you want to major in, all these types of things. So we'll go on to the next slide, and then we'll ask Flora and Rain some questions after this next one.
All right. So, a lot of what Pedro was just talking about was, how you conceptualize yourself in this process, which is tough because that is such an individualized task when you're also thinking about jumping into applicant pools with thousands of other students. And that's where, as we start to figure out where the application process fits in, there are a lot of myths that really stress students out and take a lot of your time, energy, and focus away from what you should be working on, which is your application and developing that sense of self, because you're worried about things that honestly you can't often control, right? And some of those things are going to be real in this process, and others are really not, right? So some of the myths that we've got listed here are ones that we hear no matter how many times we try to tell ourselves and get blue in the face from exacerbatingly saying that's not true. These are still things that you hear about, right? I think especially for students who are thinking about where they come from, right? We always read in context of the school from which you're, graduating. And in that way, there's often this idea that we only accept X number of students from this school, or more importantly, that there may even be quotas, right? This is a strong school, and so we have to make sure that we have 2 students from this graduating class. That's not always true, right? Or sorry, that's not ever true. While it may seem true because we do visit some of the same schools, it's because we know that there's good interest there and we're a hot topic at that institution or that high school, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're expecting anything from that. We're still looking to craft a community that is as unique and interesting as we can each and every year. And that means having to go beyond places that we know well. So don't worry about where you come from. And if your school has never sent a student to one of these institutions, you can be the first, and we're going to be excited about that. Especially when you're thinking about the rest of this process, I know that the college process has moved so early, and many of you are probably thinking about application deadlines by the end of this year and not even thinking as much about this in your senior spring. But the reality is, if you work your butt off and you get awesome news and letters from schools and can make a decision early, that doesn't mean that you're done, right? Although we admit you based on the 3 or 3.5 years of your academic achievement, we still want to know that you're going to graduate with that same commitment, which is why as you read many admission letters, it's going to say that your admission is contingent on successful completion of your senior year. So don't forget to work hard. Yes, you can breathe a little bit easier. Yes, you can maybe lean into those passions a little bit harder, but make sure that you're still showing schools that you're committed to finishing strong. That way you're going to start strong. And ultimately, when it comes to all the other aspects of your application, don't overstuff, right? There's a tendency to want to do absolutely everything you can to fill that application. And the reality is, yes, we often say don't leave cards on the table, right? Use that additional information section if you want to share a little bit more about yourself, or if schools ask you to talk more specifically about extracurriculars or involvement, use that to talk about where your passions are. But don't feel like you need to do everything. You can't possibly fit your entire life into a few pages of an application. So curate your application well. Think about how you can best share the salient details of your life and focus on those things. Because when it comes down to it, we do read everything you submit. We do not skim applications, right? We are going to read more quickly through some parts of the application, but that's so we can get to our favorite parts, right? If any of you are using the QuestBridge application, we love those short answer questions more than we love those personal essays at times, because they're little snippets into who you are and they really show personality and character. So again, don't worry about every little detail, but make sure that you take advantage of those opportunities where maybe that additional prompt really does allow you to say something more about yourself. And altogether, don't worry about the application pool, right? Don't worry about the big picture. Just focus on yourself, because that is as much time and energy that you have at your exposure. Allow yourself to really focus on the parts of who you are and not everything else that's going on.
Definitely. And I kind of want to jump in with Flora and Rain here. So from the last 2 slides, myths that maybe you told yourself, myths that you heard about, like how admissions reads an essay. Like, what are things that y'all heard when y'all were seniors and applying? What were some heavy popular rotation myths, I should say? I should call on some. Go ahead, Rain. It looks like you're ready to jump in.
Yes, so when I was in high school, pretty much a year ago to go into the same exact process, a lot of the myths that I would hear, so we would rank with our counselors based on like grades, the most likely, and possibly schools. And so for a lot of those, there are myths about acceptance rates. So if the school had above, like below 50 expecting rates, and you didn't have all A's, it was like don't apply. So that was one very important myth that I had.
Yeah, I think for me, it has to kind of go back to the essays and how the essays have to be like super sad and super personal. And like, I think for the most part, college essays should kind of be about like a moment or a characteristic or like a unique experience that captures you, just captures who you are as a person, because after all, like the college is just trying to get to know you and where your passions lie. So I think like being candid about who you are and what you're interested in will kind of get you farther than writing about what you think that the college admissions team wants to hear about. So I think that was like definitely the biggest myth for me during the college process as well.
Yeah, we've heard them all.
Yeah. And with the grades one, right? Pedro addressed that in one of his first slides, talking about this idea that I have to have all A's to get into a top school. The reality is no, we like students with B's, right? B's is average, B's is good, B's is successful. And more importantly, students who get B's in high school aren't going to freak out when they get a B in college, right? They realize that what they are learning is well beyond, or the value of what they learn is well beyond the grade that they actually earn. And so again, it's not about what you earned, it's about who you are and how you demonstrate that. I do want to touch on the question that somebody had asked about a counselor. When I talked about all those different pieces of your application that are going to come together and folks who are going to speak on your behalf, when we talk about reading in context of where you come from, that means also understanding your school environment, which means if you've got a new counselor this year and they don't know you that well, that's okay. We're not going to expect them to be able to say a ton about you, and we're not going to hold that against you either. It's not your fault that your counselor left. It's not your fault that the new person has only had 2 months to get to know you. That's why we'll absolutely accept additional recommendations if you feel like you don't have enough people speaking on your behalf. Contact schools and let them know, hey, I'm going to be sending in an extra teacher recommendation because my counselor only arrived this year and doesn't know me. The more you own your application, the more we're going to better be able to understand your story. And again, we're not going to hold things against you that you can't control. Don't stress about those things. That's exactly an example of what I was talking about. So thanks for that question. I think it's a really good one.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome question. And yeah, so we're going to jump into some really quick ones because it's COVID, it's COVID world right now. It's a pandemic. And we really, we understand that there's now myths coming out from because of the COVID and the way that, students are talking with each other, or we hear from parents or counselors. And these are some pretty big ones that we hear. And I'm just going to go over them really quickly. There's a huge myth right now that's kind of everyone's thinking, everyone's taking a gap year, so there won't be any space for me next year. And well, there are some students that are taking a gap year. Maybe it's more than normal than in usual years. It's not significant enough that it's going to really take away your spot where like there's just going to be thousands of less seats for you next year as a freshman. If anything, colleges are actually maybe wanting to have bigger incoming freshman class because many students who are in their sophomore, junior, and senior year are taking maybe a year or 2 off. So it's really not really the students taking a gap year. It's a lot of students who are actually currently enrolled at those colleges that are taking time off that might not come back. So a lot of colleges might say, you know what, we actually need to make a bigger freshman class, which would actually increase our acceptance rate. So do not think that the gap year is going to hurt you. COVID actually is messing with a lot of enrollment at colleges. And if one thing I think is going to be clear, it's that it's not going to hurt you as a freshman next year. So definitely don't worry about that. A lot of schools are going test optional. There's a myth that, test optional schools aren't really optional. They really want to see test scores. No, we don't. We are test optional because we really have determined that we can see if you're capable, we can see if you're competitive and you're compelling. We can determine all those things through all the other parts of your application, through your essays, your extracurricular activities, through what you do, through your personal words. We can determine if you're going to be a good fit for our schools. One test score is not going to determine that. That was always one part of many parts of your application. Now, because of COVID, I think we're just all realizing as colleges across the country that test scores really don't measure much. They might measure your first semester grades at best, but that's about it. And no one asks you for your test score when you apply for a job after college. So remember that. And then since I can't tour in person, I won't be able to tell if college is a good fit for me. We get this. You're not going to be able to be physically on a campus. But really, a lot of colleges are being very unique in the way they're offering virtual and engagement with you now. A lot of colleges are offering more what we call nuanced or more particular ways to introduce you to a certain community, a certain aspect of college life, even the residential life. So a lot of colleges are actually offering more really concrete things for you that you can learn about the college and really see if it's a good fit, as opposed to just going on campus, walking around, seeing the squirrels, and taking a tour and getting an information session. You actually can do a lot more nuanced things. So COVID, these are some COVID myths we're hearing, and definitely do not buy into them, as we used to say. Next, we're going to actually go a little bit more with Flora and Rain. They did this process. They've been in your shoes. It's been a long time since me and Ryan, a lot longer for me, not as much as for Ryan, since I've been in the high school application process. I wouldn't really know. I mean, besides from being an admission counselor, I couldn't give you an advice. I couldn't give a senior advice right now, really. I can tell you how to prepare yourself to apply for college, but I couldn't give you advice on like what to actually think about and what to like not worry about, because it's a different world than it was when I went to college about too many years ago, I won't say. So I'm going to pass it over to Floor and Rain and ask them just a simple question. They can both answer. We'll have Floor go first. But what's the one thing you wish that someone would have told you during senior year when you were applying to college? And I'll let Floor and Rain answer those questions.
I think that everybody gets really caught up with like the statistics of like Ivy League schools or like really selective schools. And I really just wish like people had advised me to kind of like get out of that bubble and look into like more schools, because I feel like that really limited my options. And like you were saying, like everybody is so different. So I think limiting myself to like the selective schools was kind of a mistake on my part, because I think that I could have benefited from maybe looking at other schools as well.
I think so. The admissions process in general is a very individual process. However, you're going to have so many outside sources putting their input on the type of person you are. So I think my advice is keeping the process and your own admissions process as individual as you can. So seeking help outside, but not seeking from judgment outside and asking people, where should I apply? Do you think I can get in here? Because I know for me, it's also just like evaluating the type of person and the type of learner that you are, and using the information you have on your own self to go into whatever untraditional college choice that you have.
Awesome. And what's the one thing when you got to campus freshman year? And Rain, you just got to campus, but Floor too. Like, what's the one thing that you could give advice, like for students to expect in their freshman year? Like, what's something like that they can expect that they might not be thinking about right now in terms of anything, academic, social life, whatever. And I'll let Rain go first on this one because I had Floor go first on the last one. So if you need a second to think about it, sorry, that was a quick question.
It's a bit harder for me to answer with COVID, so I'm not having the exact same freshman experience. However, I am having a very similar academic experience. I just finished my first block, and I also did half a block before I got here. So I think in terms of academics, just knowing that you're supported and that support is going to be shown straight off the bat once you get here, even a little before you're here. And that's just something that I wasn't expecting, so much support in an academic sense from my teachers, from even my admissions counselors reaching out, from different staff. So support is endless when you first arrive.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, I felt like coming into college, I was a pretty shy student, and I was like not expecting at all to be reaching out to professors for help or the resources on campus. So I think like getting comfortable with asking for help and realizing that it's okay to ask for help because you are in like this new environment, and sometimes you won't know things, and that is okay. So reaching out for help and finding that support system, like Rain was saying.
For sure. I think a lot of times when you get to college, you think that asking for help is a sign of weakness, but it's really a sign of strength. It's okay to ask for help. There are a lot of people on campus, like Rain and Floor said, they're here to help you on a college campus. There's a lot of support systems, resource centers. It's okay because college is hard. It's not easy. It's harder than high school. So don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that's great advice. Awesome. So we're gonna get going here. We'll get back to Rain and Floor in a second. They're gonna answer a lot of live questions. Hopefully, a lot of students in the chats have questions for Rain. If you can start chatting them now, if you'd like, do not even hesitate. We'll get to them hopefully. But want to move on. Just really quickly talk about Colorado College. That's the college that me and Ryan represent, as well as the college that Floor and Rain both go to. Just wanted to do a quick plug for CC. We're located in beautiful Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is just south of Denver, Colorado, about an hour south. We're a liberal arts college of about 2,200 total students. And you might have heard Rain refer to something like my first block. And that's because at Colorado College, we're on the block plan. We actually are one of only 2 schools in the United States where you actually take 1 class at a time. So instead of taking 3 or 4 classes, or what you're used to now in high school, 6 or 7 classes, you actually take 1 class at a time. Each class is 3.5 weeks. Once you finish that class or that block, you have 4.5 days off and you get to chill. So right now, Rain and Floor are on block break right now. They're relaxing. They just finished their finals out of first class. So they get 4.5 days to explore beautiful Colorado. As you can see, we have beautiful mountains behind us. We're right at the front range of the Rocky Mountains. And it is a beautiful place to go to school. Just want to also just really quickly, if you're interested in Colorado College, if any of that sounded interesting, I can go deeper into CC for sure, but we're running short on time. Want to encourage you all to come to our open house we have on October 4th and 5th, where you'll actually get to see what the block plan is all about. You'll learn from our diverse community, our amazing faculty. You'll actually get live tours of places on campus like the Tutt Library, which is the largest zero emissions, zero carbon footprint library in North America. We have the largest zero emissions zero footprint library in North America. So it's pretty cool that we have that on our campus. And if you want to connect with us, feel free to do so. We're on YouTube. We have a bunch of really cool videos on YouTube. If you just type in Colorado College, our Instagram has all these amazing shots of the beautiful Colorado Springs and the Rocky Mountains. And then our Facebook page has a lot of really cool things about what's happening on campus and events and what we're doing in the virtual world right now. So just wanted to quickly just go over Colorado College. So hopefully we see you online sometime. But we do want to answer some questions for the next 10 minutes or so. So please jot them in the chat. So what are some of the myths that you've heard? What are some things that you are hearing from, it could be from teachers, counselors, your friends, whoever. We want to get to know that. So, and if they're very student specific, we'll have Rain and Floor answer those. I know Ryan's been answering some in the chat. And so I'm really trying to look for something that hasn't been answered yet. Looks like, Ryan, you're answering them. Is there some that you're seeing, Ryan, in the my Q&A is not coming up for some reason. It's like skipping. So I'm having a tech moment.
I think we've got most of them answered. I think one that's interesting because we've got both Floor and Rain here who are technically undecided in their majors. I put a response in there about advice for folks who are undecided, and my response there is essentially be proudly undecided. But do either of you want to talk about what it's like to go into college and admit that you're still figuring out your path, which is totally okay. That's what we're here for. But comments on being undecided.
I think that one of the big reasons that I was drawn to CC2 is the fact that students don't have to declare their major until the end of the sophomore year, and most majors can be done in about 2 years. So for me, like being able to explore so many different departments and subjects, very much appealed to me because I really don't have any idea what I'm doing. And I think that I've come to terms with the fact that that's okay. So I think that not knowing what you want to do is okay, because then you just have this avenue to explore so many different things and kind of find out what you're truly passionate about, which is really nice.
I know for me, I am very undecided and just indecisive in general, but I've learned to embrace that over the time, because I feel like, especially in high school and the structures of school in general, you're always being pushed to fit yourself into one category, and it is totally okay to not do that, and to not even think about putting yourself into a category just yet. So I have many different passions, and it's like choosing whichever paths that I can go on. And I think being undecided and just not making any sort of decisions is very important. And just being okay with that is a very important concept and just the way to live.
Okay, I think my Q&A is working now a little bit. I see a question here from Jessica. Shout out Jessica. Let us know where you're from. For Floor and Rain about what your scholarship process looked like. Was that something that maybe you heavily invested in, or did you apply to a lot of scholarships? Did you not, or did you really focus on what schools gave you the most financial aid? So what was that process like for you? So thanks, Jessica, for that question.
Personally, I didn't have much support in my financial process, so scholarship findings were less of a priority in terms of making sure that I have all my financial aid is set together. But there are various different scholarship courses, so I would look into where you plan on going and the different states and just different scholarships and for all different things, because people offer scholarships based on your backgrounds, based on different activities that you like, and they can be the weirdest activities. I remember reading through a scholarship book, and it was like people who like farming potatoes in specific or something like that. There are very specific scholarships that are all out there.
Yeah, for me, I kind of had to figure out how I was going to pick for college. So looking into those need-based and need-blind schools was very important for me. But I did apply to like a couple of like local scholarships, and I think that like looking into like the businesses in your town, they really will provide like a lot of support for their students. And like Rain was saying, like there's a ton of like websites online that you can just search up, and it'll just come up with like an extensive list of like scholarships, which is really nice. And then most of them take probably 30 to 40 minutes to write. And it's basically free money, which is like really nice.
All right. Saw a question about, do we have to submit ACT score? I think from Ashley. That's going to depend on the school. It's really going to depend on if that school is what we call test blind, where they don't look at tests at all, or they're test optional, where you have the option of submitting a test or the option of not submitting a test. I will say that right now in COVID time, we're test optional at Colorado. We've been test optional, but a lot of colleges around the country are test optional. So for us, we're test optional. We really believe in student choice. If you feel that you shouldn't submit the test, do not submit the test. Don't go to another state. I've heard this myth before. People are going like, should I go to another neighboring state or out of my area to go take a test? Do not do that. Do not, one, it's not worth it. Two, to like put yourself through all that stress to travel and then take a test. And to be honest, if a school, I would be very surprised if the schools you're thinking of are not test optional right now. So most have gone test optional. There's only a very, 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 very few that have not gone test optional. So definitely be safe. All right.
I just want to add to that. I actually had a really good conversation with the counselor today about families who are still worried that optional, like now that we have all these schools going test blind and they're not even going to look at it, the schools that are optional, what does that actually mean? Well, to give you some context, at a lot of schools, at this point in the process, we would know that probably half our potential applicants have a test score. It's fewer than 20% of college students out there right now that even have a score to be able to submit. And so we expect that most students aren't going to have a score this year, which means that optional is truly optional. We have nothing else to be able to look at. If you have a score you're proud of, that's great. But if you don't, or if you have a score that you don't even have a chance to have a score, it doesn't mean that test optional is going to hurt you in a different way. It truly means that it is your choice whether or not to submit it. And sometimes you don't have a choice, and that is also okay. Floor and Rain, looks like we had a question. What's it like to live in Colorado? I know, Rain, it's a little bit of a new introduction for you. Floor, you've had a year here. Thoughts about what it's like to be out here in Colorado?
I really love Colorado because I come from Texas, and Texas is pretty flat. So I really enjoyed like the mountains and all the outdoor stuff that you can do. But at the same time, like the city life is so accessible. Like Colorado Springs is probably like a 10-minute walk from TC, and you have like your typical stuff like movie theaters, restaurants, and then an hour from us is Denver, and I know that like a lot of like concerts and just like it's a very nightlife place to be. So I have really enjoyed the combination of the nightlife and the accessibility to the outdoors.
I haven't been here too long, but I do enjoy it so much. So I had the choice to stay in Colorado or go home, and I kind of listed the pros and cons of Colorado in general already. And I ended up staying because the pros definitely outweighed the few cons. I think I live in the Loomis building, so in this residential hall, it's like you can simply look out the lounge and see the mountains. It's a 10-minute drive. It's a very surreal. So I come from New York City, which is a very cityscape, which is beautiful, but the ability to go outside and see all of the people who have hammocks in between the trees on the grass right outside my window, and to just walk and see all of the mountains right in front of me and to my left is very beautiful, and I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, here to that. Yeah, we love. So the reason they call it colorful Colorado is just there's so much to see. You can just sit outside of your stoop and just enjoy the scenery. So, got a question here. Looks like from Aylin. So if I don't do any clubs or extracurricular activities, can I add taking care of my family as the oldest sister as an ex? Yes. We kind of talked about that. We didn't get through every single myth, but yes, that is a huge myth. That's like, oh, I take care of my family, so that's like not an extracurricular. Yes, it is. That's something that you're doing outside of the classroom. That's a responsibility. That's something that shows a lot of maturity. It shows a lot of moxie. So those types of things, taking care of family, taking care of people, having to work. When you're asked to do and to take on responsibility at a young age in your family and your unit, that can be even sometimes more enlightening to us as to the type of person you are than just being in a whole bunch of different clubs. Not to say that being in clubs is bad. We love what you can be in clubs, but you might not have that opportunity because you are responsible in your family. And so that's going to show balance. That's going to show your ability to be able to balance coursework and family responsibilities and all these different things. So yes, you can definitely use it. I don't know if Ryan has something to add on that.
I know we're short on time, so probably our last comment here, but that kind of relates to the other question that folks asked. I don't have a single passion, or I'm still trying to discover what that passion is. As Pedro said, we don't expect you to have a passion, a fully fledged one at 18. I often tell students that when you're applying to college, we're not asking for a 4-year plan, we're asking for a 4-month plan, right? What are you going to do as your first steps when you get to college? What are the things that drive you and guide you to want to have an experience? And so whether it is because you haven't had time to focus on developing the passion because you've been taking care of family or have other responsibilities, or maybe you've bounced around a lot because you've tried a bunch of different things, you're still trying to find where you settle, that's fine. We're just simply looking for you to be motivated and driven by something, right? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What gets you excited about the opportunity to go to college and create an experience for yourself? That is passion in the way we talk about it in the process. It is not knowing how you're going to change the world at 17 or 18. So that will be my last comment to add to that, because again, we care about who you are and what your experience has been, not trying to measure it to a chart or a rubric. Be yourself and we'll figure you out.
I think we'll end on that. That was great. I see a gap year one, but yes, gap years are not bad. They're great. You can take a gap year. It's fine. You're going to be fine.
I would like to also promote gap years are awesome. I took a gap year actually in between college. And it was the best decision that I ever made. I think it was the first decision that I made for myself. And my parents were like, you're not going to graduate from college. But I proved them wrong. I graduated and I really learned a lot about myself. So with that being said, Colorado College, guys, Pedro, Ryan, Floor, Rain, thank you so much. I wanted to see, do you all have any parting words that you'd like to share with our audience before you go?
I think I got my last word in.
Yeah, I'll let students add the last word, but I just want to reiterate, like, everything's going to be okay. Like, just the fact that you're on these sessions and listening and getting information, and thinking about your future bodes well for your future. So whatever happens will happen. Things will work out, and you'll get to that finish line. Just work hard, believe in yourself, and you'll be fine. It'll work out. We're here to help you. We're in the office of admission, not denial. Always remember that. Admissions offices are on the office of admission, not denial. We want to look for ways to admit you. We're on your side. So don't fear us or scare us, or don't fear this process or be scared of this process. So I'll let Rain and Flora have the last words.
I had an extremely quick comment about a question someone posed concerning not being able to tour college campuses. I'm here right now, and I've met a lot of students who are unable to tour because COVID in general, in the same boat that you guys are, and they are here and they are in love with the school. There are so many ways to get engaged with it, and so I wouldn't be extremely afraid of not finding the one because you can't visit.
Yeah, kind of similar, like everybody being scared about the whole process. I think also looking into like what colleges are offering like virtually for students is a really good idea. I know that like CC's offering like virtual like presentations over like topics like clubs and organizations. And also they're still doing like interviews with students, current students and alumni, which I feel like is very important because if you do interview with like students or alumni, you get a very candid experience about what it's like to be on campus. And I think that's really valuable.
Well, I think this was a really great closing out, and I wanted to definitely thank you all so much for your time, especially in these very challenging and overwhelming days that we are living. I think this is a really great reminder that, you know, really it's our community and the people and the humans that are all here rooting you all on as you really take pride in take a lot of mindfulness and finding ways to pursue education and really making a difference in not only your life, but also your family life and in generations to come. So team, I'm going to go ahead and dismiss you. So go ahead and just hover over your face and close out the window, and we're going to go and close out. But my party people, you all have a little bit of homework, and I promise you, it's not that bad. Before you head out, please, Colorado College included a post survey at the bottom below titled Complete Feedback Survey. Please let them know how they did and what you liked about the presentation, and if there were a couple of answers that questions that did go unanswered, you can definitely include your email address in that feedback survey, and they'll follow up with you accordingly. That survey, it takes about a good 1 minute to complete, and we'll be sharing it with the team, but it's also anonymous. In addition to that, we are recording, and so we will be sending over an email to you all early tomorrow morning with the recordings as well as the PowerPoint presentations for you to review. Please share with your friends, share with your family. This is definitely learning for us all. And we really appreciate that you all have allowed College Greenlight and CapEx to be a part of your journey. We thank all of our participating colleges for this is our 5th college block party that we've hosted. So thank you to Rice University, to Bowdoin College, to Northwestern University, Colby College, as well as Colorado College, for offering your time and your insights and really investing in our community and our young people as you all pursue your dreams. So this is it for the 2020 September College Block Party. Please take a picture, selfies, hashtag us, Online College Block Party. We really truly appreciate you all sharing the love. And then in the meantime, definitely visit capex.com /greenlight-student to get started on building your college list and explore college options, as well as finding scholarships. We will be back next month, October. So mark your dates. I believe it's October 14th and 15th. We're going to have a college career special theme college block party. And we'll be providing with more details about that. So definitely look out for some more emails from us. And thank you. May the force be with you all in your journey. And we hope you all enjoy the rest of your night. And take care. Green light out.